When we begin to look at the idea of one being service to self or service to others, we reach an interesting concept whereby the individual has the choice to serve others or serve the self. And of course, serving others means serving the self at the same time. And we have to wonder, why would somebody choose to serve themselves? And why would they choose to serve somebody else? Well, if we look at the current way that human civilization has been set up at the moment, it is inherently service to self. One must look after themselves to perpetuate their own existence. So at the moment, it's virtually impossible to be 100% service to others, for that would lead to your own demise and being ineffectual as a human being. However, a balance is possible whereby we are slightly more service to others than service to ourselves, and that can be maintained at a healthy level whereby we provide assistance to all of those who require assistance and still are able to serve ourselves to the level where we keep our body healthy and our mind healthy and have a good life for ourselves. Whereas the service to self path, that's a choice to bring the desires, needs, actions, motivations towards the self at the expense of others. And you can probably think of a few good examples of people who do this. This is in fact common practice in the business and corporate world, whereby each is in turn throwing each other under the bus in order to perpetuate their own selves. And then looking at the situation like this, to trying to change a system like this from within the confines of the system would be ridiculous, and unfortunately, any change would be superficial at best. What would truly be needed is something from outside of this current system, something beyond the box, something new, some new way of thinking. And if we are to create a world where we have a more harmonious society, one that is more inherently towards service to others, then we have to bring it through ourselves. To bring the service to others world through our own being and begin living such a world. And we may not be able to change the whole world at large, but we can change our world. And of all the people we come in contact with, and all the people who wish to share a similar kind of world, we can help build it. I think it's quite important for people who are on the same path to network and build up communities or groups that can serve the purpose of replacing the establishment for when the game comes crumbling down. Because for sure, wherever you look, there is indicators that this times that we are in right now has potential for huge change. And there's so many different predictions on exactly what's going to happen. I'm not sure anyone has the answer, but there are many predictions. But what you can gather from all of this is something huge is on the horizon for humanity. And I have good reason to believe from my own research and observations that it will be within the next 20 to 30 years. I would be very surprised if this current way of living can be maintained for much longer than that. You only have to look at some of the predictions on the fuel and if the fuel goes, the whole system goes, or the tacitly maintained financial system that is artificially being hung on a thread that could go down any minute, or the earth just calling it a day and reeling it in and going crazy and really making life on here for the majority of people very hard. There could be some cosmic interference. There's the idea of an etheric tide coming over the planet, which would result in huge amounts of energy being poured into the planet and the surrounding area, and that would of course affect all of the people here. So with that would then bring psychic abilities, would then become normal for all those who are ready to handle such a increase of energy. There may be some people, of course, who cannot handle this energy and could end up going completely insane. In a recent dream I had during one of my Amanita muscaria experiences, I experienced just this, and it was very, very interesting, very vividly portrayed. But without going into too much detail about that, we come to the idea or the concept of a timeline reality split. That's also another possibility, whereby the collective experience that each individual requires for their evolution sort of comes together and could be split in a way whereby anyone who is on the spiritually alive service to others path would thereby create themselves, with everybody else on the same path, a world from which to inhabit, which they can then live out this experience. And of course, the opposite could be said for all of those who choose the service to self. And I can imagine that that world would be a hellish place and would succumb into its own apocalyptic fate. And of course, if you don't make the choice, then where would you be left? I imagine you'd have to be pretty spiritually progressed to make it onto the service to others world, so you would probably also die and repeat third density experience on a different planet. So there are a few options. Another one is the theory or idea that aliens may reveal themselves to humanity as being very real, far advanced than our current civilization, capable of technological feats that make us seem like cavemen with playing around with rocks. And there's a strong indication that at least one group of these, or a few groups of these aliens that would reveal themselves, would be hostile towards humanity and have actually been influencing humanity for a very long time. This is the hyperdimensional matrix control system, which in itself is also a subject on its own to be covered. So we have all these different ideas and prophecies and possibilities lying on the horizon for humanity. So when it comes down to it, what can we do as individuals to positively influence the events taking place? And I am talking here, as any of the followers of my website will know, I only would write for the people who are on the service to others path. I do not advocate, encourage the service to self. You'd have to go to different sources of information for that. So what can we do? Well, from my own experience, I spent many years trying to change the world on the outside, and just getting really mad and angry at all these things going on in the world, and then projecting that onto everyone that came across my path. And although there was small progress made, in the big scheme of things, very little progress was made this way. When the real change started to happen is when I turned my focus inwardly on myself. And there's a great short poem which relates to this, and it's written by an anonymous author, and it starts with, "When I was a young man, I was very eager, and I wanted to change the world. Alas, the world would not change. So, a bit older now, I tried to change my nation. Again, I was hit with failure, so my nation would not change. So, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, I tried to change my town. And again, unfortunately, my town would not change. I'm getting pretty old now and I have a family. So I decide to try and change my family. And again, frustration hits me as I am unable to change my family. And now, on my deathbed, I have a realization that only if I had changed myself, then by example, I may well have changed my family. They, in turn, by example, may well have changed my town, and then my town could have changed my nation, and I would have indeed changed the world." And this beautiful short poem very adequately wraps up what the individual can do, and it all begins with the self. Once we begin to do our own self work, to observe ourselves and the conditioning we have received throughout our life, the wounding we have picked up, and all of this baggage that in turn influences how we react to the world around us. Once we begin to observe just that alone, then we are in a better position to do something about it. And once we begin to clear all of this stuff through meditation or seeing a healer or doing energy work on ourselves, there are many different ways, then we clear the darkness for more light to be inhabited in the vessel. And the more light we have, the more energy we have, the stronger our reality creation effects are, and the more of a beautiful reality we can create for ourselves. This is not as simple as it is put in many of the new age spiritual side of things, where it's you just wake up one day and you think positive thoughts for a couple of days and then your reality is all sweet and cushy. And yeah, that it's not as simple as that. It's a bit more complex and it takes a bit more dedication, and at times it's not going to be very nice or very comfortable. It's going to be hard, but it's worth it at the end, because the changes you make will have a profound effect on reality, and you will manifest an amazing life for yourself. It is up to us whether we decide to live in this world in rags or in abundance. And to do that, we have to clear the vessel from within. We have to gain knowledge and become aware of all the back doors of our mind where the negative influences influence us. And it's quite a deep subject in itself. We get into entity attachments and thought manipulation and all of the occult sides of the hyperdimensional matrix control system that influence people from the inside. And a big part of it is actually mistaken thoughts that are not actually your own thoughts as your own thoughts. And some people, they may be slightly alarmed when they hear about the fact that there could be somebody else's thoughts in their mind. But for me, it was very empowering. And when you think about it, I'm not sure how many people on this planet are actually thinking for themselves in the true meaning of the words. Instead, they are just thinking from the conditioning they have received throughout life. So, in that perspective, then most of the thoughts in most people's minds are not actually their own. So, where do they come from? But to have your own true thoughts coming from yourself, now that is very powerful, and that can be an amazing tool to be able to positively influence the world through your own vessel. And once you have done the work on yourself, then you've gotten to a point. Of course, completion, I guess, is enlightenment, and I don't know anyone who's reached that stage, and I myself am very far away from that. But there comes to a point when you're in a much better position to be able to help others. Your life is pretty good, you are making good progress, and starting to see some of the results of this progress. So naturally, the desire is then to help others, and there are a million different ways to do this. For some people, it could just be you are working a pretty mundane job, like say a waiter, and this is elegantly put in the Bringers of the Dawn book, whereby they state that your vibration will have an impact on all of the people you encounter throughout your job. So even just projecting love consciously to the people that you encounter throughout your day could have effects on unseen levels that we are not aware of. That's just one example. If you are perhaps in food preparation and you are able to project the love into the food you're making, and people eat that love, and then just unconsciously, they may not be even aware of it, but you may change their thoughts, which is huge when we consider the thought war that is going on the planet right now. And so any effect that has a positive impact on that is very, very powerful. So it has to be done consciously, with dedication. And maybe if you bring your vibration high enough, then you wouldn't have to send the love consciously, but you would just have this vibe about you, this aura that is just contagious, and people cannot help but be affected by your presence. Of course, that's something that would come after much sincere work. And you may think, you may know of a few people that just happen to be really amazing people and just a joy to be around. And we could say that if people are susceptible to negative influences via projection of hate onto them, then of course the opposite is also true. And we can help influence the probability of them having a beneficial, supportive, positive thought. And on one of my Amanita Muscaria experiences, the second one, I experienced very clearly that there are different places where thoughts can originate from, and ultimately you could sum it down to you, the positivity or the divine, negativity or the matrix. And this in itself has many different outlets on different ways that each of these influence our mental landscape. But if we are able to positively influence this, then that could have unseen effects that could ripple through via the butterfly effect and could have huge impacts further down the line. So that in itself is very, very interesting to think about and speaks for how we can positively influence the events taking place on the world. But of course, it requires our own self-work. It all comes back down to the self-work. And after we have done enough work on ourselves, then we are in a better position to help others. And this may then give us the, say, requirement to merge onto the positively orientated timeline. But of course, who knows exactly how the events taking place are going to play out. It could well be a combination of the possibilities I mentioned earlier. We could have, say, for example, an economic collapse coupled with an etheric tide hitting the earth and aliens revealing themselves. That could all happen, maybe not exactly the same time, but one after the other, or some other combination of this. And for sure, that would be a very, very interesting time to be alive if all of that's going down. But we'll wait and see for that. So right now, you can see it as we are in the pre-stages of a huge event, and with the luxury we have of the current way of living and the access to information, communication, we have great potential to vastly influence the minds and hearts of the people that we wish to bring forth a more positive reality. And some people may be drawn to music or writing or something or arts, and those are very powerful mediums to be able to influence the minds of people. And if we get into the idea of how people are, their life mission is to help others, they have come here with that specific mission, and you could bring in the idea of wanderers into all of this. But so if you feel you are one of those people who are here to help others, then know there are many, many ways for you to do this. But remember to help yourself first. And let's see what the future holds. I am quite confident and very optimistic about what the future will entail. Even if there is great suffering and destruction, I believe the spiritually alive currently inhabiting this place are going to bring forth some amazing, incredible things. And it will go beyond our wildest dreams what truly happens. And the suffering that will entail, as long as the Matrix doesn't sort of win in its end game and gets more nearly complete control over humanity, then the reality that is created is going to be truly amazing. And I personally, and I know there are many amongst us who would do everything in their power to not let that dark reality become the end. So, with that, go forth, love yourself, work on the self, and let's bring this matrix down and bring forth an age of true love and light.